Welcome to our second City Club Candidate Forum of the election season. My name is Forrest Longman, and I am the board president of City Club. The mission of City Club is to inform, connect, and engage our community to strengthen the civic health of our region. We emphasize civil conversations and listening to others. We begin by acknowledging with humility that the land where we are today is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish people, and it has been that way since time immemorial. As always, I'd like to thank all our volunteers who make programs possible. As always, I'd like to thank KMRE board member Robert Clark, who's producing today's program, and BTV10, who will be broadcasting it to their viewers. I'd like to thank our sponsors for their support. First, we have our first supporting member of City Club announced today. That's Peace Health Medical Center, who is sponsoring us at a higher level. And then our contributing members, they are Bruce and Claudia Deasand, Danny Neal, of real estate broker with the Moyat Group, the Firehouse Arts and Events Center, Colshan CPAs, Opportunity Council, Pacific Continental Realty, Unity Care Northwest, Village Books, Western Washington University, Whatcom Community College, and the Whatcom Community Foundation. We're going to have a special online program on October 4th to discuss the countywide public health, safety, and justice sales tax proposition, as well as the two City of Bellingham citizen initiatives. Our regular October meeting, our lunch, is still a little bit in flux, but more information about both of these will be available on our website at bellinghamcityclub.org. And finally, I'll introduce today's moderator, Jane Freudenberger.
Okay, we're going to get started right away because we're covering a lot of races today. The first half of our forum, we're focusing on the candidates for the mayor of Bellingham. And then we'll switch gears and speak to the candidates for Bellingham City Council, starting with Council at Large, then Ward 1, and then Ward 3. We're going to ask a series of questions prepared by our program committee. And while no questions are being taken from the floor, we did ask our members to email us any concerns they had that we'd like to address. Each candidate will be given, we'll start alphabetically with the first question, last names, and we'll alternate answers from the candidate. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond to the questions. The timers will be in front of you, and they're going to be holding up a yellow card when you have 15 seconds left from that. And I know you've been running this several times in forums, so you know how to do it. And the red card means you're done, so stop talking. Now, you all understand how this is going to work? Okay? Seth, you're okay with it? Yeah. All right. So let's get started, and we're going to begin again, as I said, with the mayoral race in alphabetical order by the last name. And let's welcome Seth Fleetwood and Kim Lund to City Club. Okay, so we're going to start with candidate Fleetwood because of his name is an F before L. Please take 2 minutes to introduce yourself. And what is the most important strength and administrative experience you bring to the mayor's job?
Is it on? It's on. It's nice to see everybody and see so many familiar faces today. I enjoy this space. It's more intimate than Northwood Hall, which for us people that are on the stand probably make us feel a little bit better, a little more relaxed. What do I bring to the job? I'm Seth Fleetwood. For those that don't know me, I've lived in Bellingham my whole life. Product of public schools in Bellingham. Grew up in a very active, community-minded family. Probably instilled notions of public service. I've been public-spirited my entire life. I served working in the legislative session in my early years, worked for a congressional member after college, served a couple terms on the county council and the city council. The strengths that I bring to the job are experience. I know how to run the city. I know the programs, I know the people, I know the processes. I've been intimately engaged. I bring a very collaborative approach to decision making. I vet things with people that understand issues. I ask lots of questions. I identify the time frame that is needed to make a decision. I've made a lot of difficult, tough calls in the last several years as mayor of Bellingham during a very challenging time. And I feel good about the way that those questions have been deliberated. And so I feel fundamentally sound about all of the fundamental tough calls that I've had to make in the last few years. And I think it's largely because of the process that I bring to my team and the culture I instill about how to think about problems. And that's about it. Thank you.
And candidate Lund.
Good afternoon, everyone. It truly is a pleasure to be here. And I think that everyone in this room is deeply invested in the betterment of our community. And this level of engagement is how we're going to move forward. As a candidate for mayor, I have a vision for this community where everyone is safe, healthy, and we are uplifting all. And I come into this as a candidate who is a lifelong resident of this community. It's an extraordinary place. It is the best place to be, and we deserve excellent administrative leadership. I grew up here, I've raised my family here, and I'm a big believer in all that Bellingham can be. I'm the first person in my family to go on to college, and I was propelled into future opportunities that I didn't even know was possible because of educators in our local public schools that invested in me. And I went forth, got my degree from the University of Washington in chemical engineering, and began my career as a team leader at Intel Corporation. And that was a fabulous place to get rooted in leadership and what it looks like to connect people to purpose in their work, to resource high-performing teams, to set incredible goals, and inspire people to do great work. I came back here and I've spent time, more than 11 years, in the nonprofit community, both with CommunityWise Bellingham and for the last 8 years as the executive director of the Bellingham Public Schools Foundation. There I set organizational budgets that are a reflection of the priorities and values that we need to move forward on. And I've negotiated with a diverse board to work collaboratively to make sure that we're moving forward together. And these are the that I bring into City Hall and that I will act and use as mayor of this community to move us forward and take decisive action for the Bellingham that we need to become and we are today.
All right, thank you. And Kim, you should just keep that because you're up next again. Candidate Lund, this is your question. A number of businesses have indicated they intend to move out of the downtown core and vacant storefronts are common. What, if anything, can be done to attract and retain businesses in Bellingham's downtown community?
I think that this is a really critical question. And what she's referring to is that 40% of respondents to a downtown partnership survey have said that they are actively considering in this year leaving the downtown core. And that is stunning if we think about what that can mean for our community. So we need to be taking urgent action to support businesses. They absolutely are experiencing increased direct costs, whether it's graffiti abatement, window replacement, sanitation concerns, and a loss of foot traffic because of real or perceived threats to the downtown core. And so what I call for is those urgent stabilization actions. And also, we need to be doing this within the context of an overall framework, a systems level thinking and approach that combines businesses, nonprofit communities, civic leaders to all come together and create a downtown activation plan. And it will also outline the short-term and long-term actions to move downtown into the vibrant future that we all want in this community. So short-term actions can look like downtown commercial core protection zones, and it certainly should look like accelerated hiring within our police department right now to bring back the bicycle patrols. That's a unique set of eyes that develops trusted relationships that is missing right now from the downtown community. We can invite creatives and small business owners to reactivate our vacant storefronts. As mayor, this is all work that I want to lead on to create the downtown that we all want and deserve.
So the pandemic intensified and exacerbated an array of social problems in our downtown. We saw increases in homeless people. We saw increases in people with mental health crisis and drug addiction. It coincided with the spike in the scourge, which is the fentanyl. And I didn't create those conditions, of course, but I inherited them and had to respond to them as the mayor of Bellingham. The conditions that Kim refers to are ones that we have to respond to, and we are at the city of Bellingham. We have taken decisive action and urgent action on an array of things. We've gotten very creative about staffing back up at the police department. We've implemented a range of creative measures for recruitment and retention, and it's working. We've got 13 people in academy right now, so we're going to see success in staffing back up. I have given direction to, this is a tough mic, isn't it? I've given direction to our police department to create foot patrols downtown. We're working right now on a way to actually increase those numbers so we have more people. We've established a sanitation division, a graffiti abatement program. We've funded the Downtown Bellingham Partnership. There's just a range of things that we're working on to address problems. Obviously, we need services for people in behavioral health crisis. We're working with our delegation at the state to identify what kind of funding that we can get, because we're a city and we don't have the local funds to do all of the things that are necessary. But we want to have a coherent response that addresses and gets the services to the people that need them, while at the same time we're staffing back up in our police department, holding people accountable, trying to divert people who have fentanyl addiction, as one example, to services that will help them and also get them off the streets of Bellingham. So we're calling it a downtown safety initiative. I've created the downtown mayor's work group, and we're making progress. We're doing the hard work of making progress.
What, if anything, can the city do to impact the lack of affordable housing, which is really a crisis in Bellingham? And you mentioned funding. Is there any funding for that available to the city?
There is funding available to the city. We live that has very robust public funding. We've got a number of initiatives, including a home fund, which I proudly sponsored as a city council member that grew up a countywide housing affordability task force that recommended creation of a public levy. We bring in nearly $10 million a year in the city for permanently subsidized housing, and that money goes a long ways. We leverage it. On the affordability market-driven aspect of it, we're going to increase choice for the people in Bellingham. We have an infill toolkit that we need to identify how to apply more widely within our community. We're going to create more ownership opportunities, and this is all going to of a comprehensive plan process that we're involved in right now. I think it's going to be a historic comprehensive planning process that's going to bring in and harness the energies of our creative community, our intelligent community. We're going to process and vet them through council decision-making for inclusion and policy. So I'm confident that we're going to address at the local level, to the best extent we can, a problem that is, of course, systemic and national in its scope. We don't create the dynamics that we see here in Bellingham. These are problems that are faced in cities throughout the nation. The affordability crisis. It's fundamentally a market-driven problem. I would submit, drawn on by the fact that we're a very popular location. People with relatively greater wealth are moving to our community. But we're doing all the things that we can do at the local level. We're staffing back up in the planning department. We budgeted for additional planning examiners. City Council just gave us authority to hire yet another planning examiner. So we're going to be able to increase the rate at which we can process permits. There's a
And it's your turn.
This is a question that I think is fundamental to how we move forward as a community. And it's one that gets me excited because in the levers of what a city can influence and what we can pull on, our ability to create housing across the continuum is something that a city is directly in control of. And so we have a real opportunity. I acknowledge that there are outside forces at play in this, but as a leader, I believe that we can act with agency as well, and we can do more as a city. So what does that look like? Well, we need to continue to add staff. We are adding staff, but we need to do more. And when the city council does a budget amendment to approve hiring more staff, it needs to be posted in weeks and not months, which is what is happening now. So let's resource the planning department. And when that happens, it's critical because the cost for housing begins to accrue on the day that you file your permit. And so every day that is a delay adds to cost of housing in this community. So let's continue to resource. I believe in looking at the entire Cascadia region for good ideas. So I want to look throughout the local community for cities that are doing this work better. Let's copy with pride the processes and expedited ways that other cities are doing this work well right now. I think that there's many opportunities for us to look critically at our fees and incentives that are either holding back affordable housing. And when I say housing across the continuum, I mean low barrier shelters to market rate housing. We need abundance across the board. And so we can look to the fees and incentives that are working well. And we can do this with an eye towards equity, towards meeting our climate goals. And I absolutely believe that this work is possible and we can do more to create affordable housing in Bellingham.
Okay. What should the city do to incentivize homeowners and landlords to reduce the carbon footprint of their building? And this is for you to start. I mixed those up, so it'll be yours.
To me?
Yes.
Okay. So the question was, what can we do to incentivize reduction in carbon for both homeowners and landlords? And I've reflected on this question, and a missed opportunity to me that was something that stood out in the Climate Action Fund proposal that the current mayor had put forth, but did not make it to the ballot. But one of the things that was missing in that was incentives for landlords to do more to create energy efficiency upgrades in their units. And I know the impacts of this. My campaign manager in the primary, a young college student, was paying $400 a month in his electricity bill. And that is stunning. Those are precisely the members of our community that are least able to afford those kinds of costs. And it's because they had a landlord that had not made any investments in insulation or efficient appliances. So we can create incentives within the city to do more to both support people that are struggling to pay those bills and meet our climate goals. And I think that there's real opportunities through the Inflation Reduction Act for us to push money out to help all of us be partners in this work. The climate crisis is here. It is now. This is the decade where we need to be taking action as a community. And the city should be doing all that we can to incentivize this work so that we are all playing an important part in moving forward and meeting our climate action goals. Our goals right now at the city have stalled. And in part, that's due to the pandemic, but also we need to be thinking critically about the programs that we're rolling out and the speed at which we're rolling out these programs as a city. I want to be a mayor, and I will be a mayor that catalyzes this action for all of us.
Well, of course, I take respectfully exception to the contention that climate action work at the City of Bellingham has stalled. I would submit that we're doing more urgent action as it relates to climate reality than ever before. I'm delighted that we live in a city where climate science is accepted by a large majority of our people. I'm glad that we live in a community where it's become an accepted and popular high priority that needs to be addressed. It wasn't that long ago that it wasn't embraced as fully as it needs to be. I've been a climate activist for many, many years. I was the first chair of the County Climate Action Advisory Board that is doing a lot of really good work. I've dramatically elevated the prominence of climate action in our city. We're doing a number of things. I created the first office of climate that's in the mayor's office. Number of the things that we can do. First off, the council passed and the administration worked on a building ordinance that passed that created the requirement to build future systems and future buildings that are electric, getting off natural gas. One thing that we're working on right now that's going to help us identify how to resolve this stickly problem is the fact that 16,000 homes, both owned privately and in the form of landlord rentals, are on natural gas systems. And many, many people don't have the means to afford conversion and transition to renewable systems, to an electric heat pump, for example. And so we're doing a pilot right now that's going to inform us on how and what the barriers are to implementing at scale that sort of issue. Communities around the state are working on this. You made reference to taking ideas from other cities. I was at the National Mayors Conference in January, and the theme of it was shamelessly steal good ideas from other cities. So we are actively involved in that. So,
Okay, I guess you just keep the microphone, candidate Fleetwood. And your next question is, what's your position on ABC recycling and issues related to industrial noise, pollution, and impact on city streets and neighborhoods? How do you balance industrial activity and economic development with residential concerns?
oh, that's a good topical question. First off, people recall that there was a mill on our waterfront forever and ever. I thought it was going to be there forever and ever. When they closed down around 20 years ago, there was this prominent opportunity for the people of Bellingham to reclaim our waterfront. 10 years ago, as president of the city council, we finally got a master plan adopted. And the theme that was accepted by everybody at that time was the notion of maintaining not only mixed-use new waterfront, but also aspects of it that were going to be a working waterfront. So it was zoned for industrial uses. Then many years passed and there wasn't action, and the port gets a tenant. The city concluded that it was broadly within a permitted use, and now we have this issue. The people that are concerned about noise, amongst other things, are absolutely right in wanting that mitigated. And we are actively working to help find a solution that will mitigate, among other things, the noise. I know that they're under a ecology permit as it relates to other things, including dust, but the noise issue is something that we are working to address. I've given direction to our legal staff to amend our noise ordinance. We have a noise ordinance that's simply not sufficient, and it doesn't address the issue in an industrial zone right now. So at our next council meeting, that's going to be on October 16th, we're going to be presenting the Bellingham City Council with a range of options as it relates to the noise ordinance. I believe that the people in Bellingham who can't sleep at night because of this particular issue need relief, and we're going to help them get that relief. We're going to do it in a collaborative way because it's a complicated issue. Port has contracts. We're trying to avoid lawsuits. We want to proceed and mitigate these problems in a collaborative way. I have a meeting coming up very soon with a bunch of the parties. We hope to continue to make progress.
Well, certainly this is an important topic and it's for a mind. In fact, we'll be at a meeting later tonight where the community will be talking more about this. So to me, it has shades of the Gateway Pacific Terminal right now and what is going through our community. And we absolutely had a working waterfront. My grandfather retired from Georgia Pacific, and my uncle was a displaced worker when that plant went down. And we took that closure as an opportunity to reimagine a waterfront. And in part of preparation for this, I spent time looking at the 2004 Waterfront Futures Group recommendations. And we as a community came together and create an incredible and inspiring vision for what we could turn that into. And we have taken the time as a community to invest in this vibrant vision. And what ABC brings is a contrast to that vibrancy. And it is critical that we have a working waterfront, but I see this as of course, there is noise abatement and mitigation from that operation that we need to be tackling as a city. And to be honest, it makes me wonder about the conversations between the port and the city that have led us to this moment. But we, as a community over years, have done the hard work to move Parbury, to relocate them out of Old Town so that it can meet its full potential. And now we have another recycling facility in the heart of the waterfront. And to me, this seems to be an issue of jobs versus jobs. So we do have good jobs that are being created at the recycling facility right now, but at what cost to the other jobs? There is Millworks that is being constructed and about to open, which will bring families living to the waterfront. We have a new hotel that is going to be adjacent to this property. And so we have got to come back to the vision of what we have invested in over the years as a community and really ask these critical questions about the waterfront that we want and works for all.
All right, now I'm going to answer. He did talk about this one. The last question, and is there a topic we haven't raised that you'd like to address? And I believe it's you, Kim, again.
Okay. The topic I'd like to close out on is the fundamental difference in leadership and the difference between us as candidates. And that is that I think in this moment that Seth and I share fundamental values, and we are lifelong residents, and we are both deeply committed to this place. And that it's about bringing the energy, the courage, the experience to catalyze the change that we need in this moment. And that is what my candidacy is bringing. And we have a different definition of leadership. And that is, in times of crisis, we need our leaders to be all in. We need, Seth reflected that his biggest regret of the first term is that he wasn't more engaged and approachable, and that leaders in times of crises need to be embedded and engaged throughout the community, that they are leading with courageous decisions. And that is the mayor that I will be. I think that I have many organizations that are backing my candidacy in this moment, and they are backing my candidacy as organizations that backed our current mayor last time. I have a vision of leadership that is resonating, and City Club is a forum that inspires critical thought. And one thought I want to leave you with is the fact that the 4 organizations that represent this more than 80% of the employees at the city of Bellingham that go to work on service to all of you in this community every day, they are asking for a change in leadership in City Hall. So I ask you to reflect on that and support them in their ask for a change in the mayor's office. And I have a vision for City Hall that will be more inclusive. I will be a mayor that listens. I will take courageous leadership. I will take decisive, courageous action. It will be informed on data, and I would be deeply honored to earn your vote come November.
Thank you. So just the briefest comment on unions. So I have good relations with people at the city of Bellingham. I'm collaborative. I have an open door policy. You learn a lot when you're the incumbent mayor and you negotiate labor contracts. You don't get rewarded for what you've done. You get punished for what is perceived as something that hasn't happened. And these are very complicated matters. I will continue to have good relations with labor at the city of Bellingham. You've been endorsed by the police guild. Those are 3 people, very, very conservative, who make that decision. A 106 5 people make that decision out of a department of 215. So the labor issue is an interesting one. The reference to wanting to be an approachable mayor was in the context of the fact that I became mayor and was immediately faced with a pandemic. And I had to deal with the fact of remote work and shelter in place. That was the context of that. And so I'm delighted that we're past that, and hopefully we'll remain past that. My big issue in the city of Bellingham is how we accommodate a growing population. I had the pleasure of working with former Mayor Tim Douglas on a project called the Cascadia Innovation Corridor, where we brought former governor of the state of Washington, Christine Gregoire, to our city to have a conversation thinking big about the future of what is known as Cascadia, the Cascadia megaregion. People are going to continue moving to our area. How we accommodate them in the most inspired, thoughtful way that is sustainable. We want to be the first sustainable megaregion between Portland and Vancouver, thinking about how we're going to accommodate a million people that are going to be moving here, how we're going to transport people, the inspired visionary work of building the future city that we need. That's an exciting thing that I see and want to continue working on for the city of Bellingham in my second term, and I look forward to it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you both. Okay, we're going to do the council introductions. This is going to be at large. So our 2 candidates are Jace Cotton and Russ Whidbey for council at large. And please we're going to start with you, candidate Cotton, since you're first in the alphabet. Take 2 minutes to introduce yourself and what is your professional, political, and volunteer experience. What is your best attribute for this job?
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Jace Cotton. I'm a candidate for the at-large city council position. When I came to Bellingham, my first experience of the Bellingham housing market was choosing to live out of a van in a friend's driveway to avoid more student debt. And since that time, things have only gotten worse. I have been an organizer in Bellingham for the last 6 years, most recently working to flip the 42nd Legislative District and pass the Healthy Children's Fund. Thanks, Riley. And in those many years of work, I've knocked on thousands upon thousands of doors and talked to everyday folks who are feeling the squeeze of a rising cost of living. That looks like parents who are taking on second jobs to afford childcare. That looks like seniors that are paying more than 50% of their income on rent. This is a community-wide crisis. We've seen just last year, right, a 27% increase in the number of unhoused people, homeless people on our streets. And the direct cause of that is the cost of housing and the shortage of housing. When I'm elected, I will be the only renter on city council. And it's going to take, I think, some more bold approaches to actually make the kind of progress we need to deliver affordability in the long term and the short term to protect those who are most vulnerable to losing their housing, to losing their savings. And for me, this is an issue that affects the very oldest to the very youngest. And what I bring is the spirit of an organizer to say who needs to be at the table to get this done and what new solutions have we not considered. Thank you.
And candidate Whidbey.
First of all, can you hear me? Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Russ Whidbey, and thank you for being civically engaged. I'd like to thank the leadership of the City Club, and this is just a wonderful experience. Let me say this. I've been here now 43 years in Bellingham. I came from a little city east of here called Brooklyn, New York. Came out, oh, thank you. Another applause. Yes, one person. Thank you. You're very kind. Came out here to go to school at Western, and still here, still engaged. I am one of your current Bellingham Planning Commissioners, one of the 7. I serve at the pleasure of the city and the mayor and all of you. I want to let you know, I'm going to say it right up front, I'm an accountant by nature. I'm an accountant by nature. What I mean by that is I look at data and I'm data driven. So I am not a politician, but certainly I understand that the city runs off dollars and delivers services. And we're trying to make it happen to get the most bang for your buck, meaning the fact that your tax dollars are what delivers services to the city. Without those tax dollars, the city could not run. So first of all, I want to say thank you for being engaged and for paying your taxes. Really. But what I hope to bring in the lens of the city is a financial lens to realize that, hey, it's not our money, City Council. It's all of your dollars who contribute. And so we need to take that seriously from an aspect of stewardship. We have to make the most effective use of each one of those dollars. And so that's what I hope to bring to the colleagues that I'll be serving with in the first of the year, to make sure, and I can speak the language and the jargon of dollars, tax dollars, and services. So I want to mention also that I'm an accounting instructor at Whatcom Community College. Thank you very much.
And you can keep the
Thank you.
microphone for a minute. What changes to the comprehensive plan would you propose to address the impacts of climate change?
Well, one of the things I'm passionate about is talking about the tree canopy. I was concerned, and I hope I don't upset anyone, but the Bellingham Golf and Country has a lot of old growth trees. And some of you may or may not know that some of them are going to be possibly targeted to not stand upright possibly anymore. So one of the things I'm concerned about is that because tree canopy, as you know, helps with that regard. And one of the things I'm concerned about is, can we put enough seedlings or trees to replace that, which we're going to be losing? Right next door, of course, is Cornwall Park. So between, I think, Cornwall Park and the Country Club, that is a lot of our tree canopy within the city. And so I'm concerned about that. And I know it may be tough, but I'll be bringing that concern up as a planning commissioner, just as a thought process that maybe too late now, but certainly want to potentially negotiate or talk to the folks at the Bellingham Country Club in that regard. So if there's any way to reduce the number of trees that may be slated to be coming down, or if there's any way we can negotiate with them to do it in stages, I don't know, but that's one of the things that really concerns me from a climate resiliency and our tree canopy.
And Candidate Cotton, same question.
As a young person, I know I'm going to live through some of the worst consequences of climate change. And so I feel a lot of urgency around what we can do to reduce emissions locally, do to build resiliency. And probably the issue that has affected me most personally as a renter has been the split incentives for efficiency upgrades. We spoke about this earlier. My energy bill in the past has been top $300 in the worst of winter, and that's a lot. So as we work on the state level to get things like, our PACER or on-bill financing, ways to give some more financing tools available to landlords and tenants. In the short term, I think we need to really invest in some strong incentives for landlords to be able to make those conversions and upgrades. Of course, we know, right, the biggest contributor to climate change is our built environment. And that has also huge equity concerns too, right? The lowest income among us are paying the most in their energy bills. And so I would make that a priority, and I will always defer, I think, to the climate experts and organizers in our community who've been leading on this work for a long time. Thank you.
What new suggestions do you have to boost economic development within the city of Bellingham? And that's for you, Mr. Cotton.
Can anybody guess what a living wage for a single parent is in the city of Bellingham? Shout out a number. according to the MIT living wage calculator, some of y'all were getting close. It's $36 an hour. Anybody know any jobs you can get for $36 an hour in Bellingham right now? No. And for a single adult, right, a living wage is $17 an hour. And this is one of the reasons we worked really hard to get an initiative on the ballot this fall that's going to raise the local minimum wage by $2 by 2025. We looked at every jurisdiction that had done that, and we saw really strong benefits to working people with none of the negative, consequences you sometimes worry about, increase on local prices or business failure rates. But we did see that really lifted folks up. When we invest in the people who make the least, they spend more of their income locally. And so we need I think, economic development strategy that prioritizes affordability, right? This always comes back to housing. But I think with things like community benefit agreements, with things like, frankly, having mixed use zoning in a lot of our neighborhoods that prioritizes, being able to walk to a coffee shop, these in the long term can help us be a city where everyone can afford and wants to live with a good quality of life. Thank you.
All right, same question to you, Candidate Whidbey.
Well, would you be kind enough to repeat the
Of
question
course.
again? Thank you.
What new suggestions do you have to boost economic development within the city of Bellingham?
Well, one of the things I think of for me is being the only union member in the race, part of the American Federation of Teachers. I look at things like community workforce agreements and project labor agreements. I want to look at opportunities for the city. I know we have an apprenticeship ordinance already, but I want to bring union labor to Bellingham. I want that to be a part of this community because I know for my family growing up, my mom worked at Boeing. My dad was also a stockman who was a part of the union. That helped to lift us up back home in New York and then out here. So I want to bring workforce initiatives through unions and hopefully through union pensions in the community. I don't know if we could be like a Seattle, like an Amazon, who is donating $25 million to housing and things of this nature in the city. But I would like to see us do more of that and try to bring up larger employers, but more importantly, also work on those agreements that force project labor agreements and try to enhance situations with apprenticeships here in the city. The other thing I'd like to say in that regard, since I do have a little time, the fact of trying to look at creative measures with relationships we already have here in Bellingham. One of the things I'm working on currently, it's a little creative, and it may be a little mustard seed, but doing a collaborative effort between BTC, Bellingham Technical College, and the Mission, and also Northwest Youth Services. So one of the things that you'll be seeing in January 2024 is a cohort from the Mission sending students out to BTC to get livable wage paying jobs, getting their GED, and then we have it on leadership with the president that we will pay, because I serve as the BTC Foundation, I serve there, to pay for tuition for those individuals to help lift them out. So that's what I'd like to see some creativity done.
Right. So the city owns several empty buildings. There are also vacancies in Bellis Fair Mall, the old St. Luke's building, and other locations. Can the city make use of these existing resources to expand permanent supportive housing for the chronically homeless? And that will begin with you, Mr. Whidbey.
Yes, I believe that we can. I believe that we can utilize the opportunities there to kind of look at this and try to think strategically how we can not only provide housing for individuals, but as I said, and I'll go further, maybe even food, shelter, and then technical skills. Because I'm about breaking the cycle. BTC, break the cycle. I want to try to help uplift people out of poverty. But I understand certainly you have to look at the critical question you're addressing here of housing. So we can do that. We need to be more creative in that regard. And speaking of creativity, as far as houseless scenarios, had a conversation with Hillary Franz, and who is the Secretary of Public Lands. And in that conversation, opened up the aspect of looking at a few things. One, could we look at some of the land that's here in Whatcom County that's under the DNR, Department of Natural Resources, to open up for our opportunity for housing? And somewhat agreeable to that, or at least broach the subject of that, or looking at something of trying to say affordable housing, mixed rate housing, maybe something I can talk about, call it urban camping zone for those who find themselves houseless that don't want to go into a structured situation. So there's some opportunities. You got to get a little bit out of the box, a little bit out of the comfort zone. Maybe we need to take this up on the Planning Commission, but certainly there's some opportunities we're missing that we need to take advantage of. And certainly if you elect me to City Council at large, those would be the kinds of things I'm looking at, wanting to talk about, and then can strategically talk about it from a financial end to be able to prove that we have the necessary dollars in our budget to be able to pay for it. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right. And candidate Cotton.
So the question was about, is it potentially feasible to convert vacant buildings to supportive housing? I'm not an expert on the kind of architectural social needs of what that needs to look like. So I think that's worth a feasibility study. But I also think the big constraint here is funding, right? The home fund is completely allocated. The backlog for rental assistance is quite long, right? If you talk to tenants, we do not have enough money to build the housing that we need. And so I think we need to be bold as a community to talk about that we're going to need additional revenue. And that can look like a lot of things. It may very well look like a Home Fund 2 or lobbying on the state level for a new REIT local option. But we just don't have the money to do all the work we need to do. And so there's not a secret pile of money waiting for us. We have to be bold as a community and saying, what are our priorities and what are the return on investments that we need to really meet this crisis? A 27% increase in the number of homeless individuals in a year should startle all of us. And so both prevention, which is obviously much cheaper, as well as rapid rehousing needs to be our top priority for budgets moving forward.
All right. So candidates, this is your last question. Is there a topic we haven't raised that you'd like to address? And candidate Cotton, you go first.
We are short about 5,000 slots for childcare in this county. We have made a huge county level investment. I was really honored to play a role in passing the Healthy Children's Fund last year. But I think there are a lot of opportunities for the city to step up and not leave that all on the county's plate. When we talk to young families in this community who are just starting out, folks are paying more than their mortgage on childcare, and it is a huge barrier to local business, to equity concern in terms of the effect that the child's first 5 years of their life has on their later development. And frankly, I think it's unacceptable that this is not a core priority of the city. And that is a focus I will bring. Again, as an organizer, I don't always have all the answers, but I know the people who are doing the good work in the community with the good ideas, and I know how to pull people together to get things done. And so that's, again, politics is not a spectator sport. We are not electing people to solve our problems. We are really electing people who can lead on all of us playing a role in those solutions. Thank you, and thank you to City Club for this fabulous event.
And candidate Whidbey, same question.
Well, when I think of this, I think of my area of where I live, Birchwood, and the Birchwood Neighborhood Association. I think of one area that, it's hard to solve, but it's in all of our faces, whether we want to admit it or not, and that's fentanyl. I know those in Birchwood and are probably not used to locking their doors, but I'm going to encourage that you do. I know you're not used to locking your cars, but I'm going to encourage that you do. I can tell you at Birchwood and Shuckson middle schools, this is having an effect because the fentanyl coming into our community is looking like candy now that could be affecting our kids. I had a conversation with Chief Rebecca Mertzig, and this is a concern I know on the law enforcement end they're trying to help, but I just want to remind us of each of us of our responsibility to make sure we take care of one another. Now, I know that at least in Birchwood, there are some things that, as was stated, some treatment centers there. There are 3 of them. There's one behind where we used to meet, City Club. The Northwood Hall is now a treatment center, methadone. The Masonic Temple that was on Maplewood is now a treatment center. The one on the nursing home Avamere on Birchwood is now or becoming a treatment center. This is affecting us all. And so each one of us, even though we're not law enforcement, each one of us has to think about this because it's affecting us all. Now, you say, what can do? What can we do? I was thinking of that we all can take an active part watching and taking care of our neighbors. And if you see something, say something. Don't be afraid to call the police and try to help out in that regard. But it's going to take a concerted effort of all of us, treatment centers and neighbors, just like you good folks here at City Club. So thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you both, and we're going to move up the table now to Ward 1, and that would be, is it Eamon? Do I have that right? Good. Eamon Collins and Hannah Stone. So the first question, and that will be for you, Eamon, is please take 2 minutes to introduce yourself. What is your professional, political, and volunteer experience? And what priorities would you advocate for if you were elected?
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today and for your engagement in our civic life in Bellingham. As a teacher, I'm delighted to see how many of you are taking notes. That really warms my heart. I'm a high school science teacher at the Lummi Nation School. Before I returned to the classroom as a teacher, I spent 5 years working for the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives as an education policy advisor. Then when we moved here, my wife took a job as the pediatrician at the Lummi Tribal Clinic. I got another master's degree in science education. I was originally a 4th grade teacher. This time I wanted to go back and get to do the fun stuff with labs and kind of explaining the underlying natural processes of our world. I was very glad to be away from politics. But a couple years ago, I learned about an affordable housing project in my neighborhood, in the Birchwood neighborhood. And I started volunteering with a group called the Gulshan Community Land Trust, a nonprofit that builds affordable homes in the community. Eventually, they asked me to join their board and their executive committee. And through that work, I've been astonished to realize how difficult it is to create homes in our community that regular people can afford. A Gulshan builds for people earning between 80% and 120%. Of the area median income, which is about $48,000 to $110,000. So we're not even talking about affordable housing for especially low-income individuals. We're talking about teachers, low-paid professionals, I'm alarmed by the lack of urgency that I see in our current government. This is a crisis that I think is going to get so much worse in the coming years.
And now the same question. Would you like me to repeat it?
No, it's okay. Good afternoon. I first want to thank the City Club and all of you who have taken time out of your busy days to be here. It just elevates the importance. So I know some people are having to take off work. So really appreciate the attendance and focus on the importance of our local elections. My name's Hannah Stone. I'm running for re-election to serve as the Ward 1 representative on the Bellingham City Council. I was first appointed in 2018 when there was a vacancy, when Roxanne Murphy left the council. That was a unanimous appointment out of 24 applicants for that position. And then I ran for election in 2019. So I'm finishing up my first term on the council. As far as what I bring and my experience, so I've been in Bellingham for 18 years. I'm a mother, I always say first and foremost. I think we just sent our oldest child off to college, and our daughter is a sophomore at Bellingham High School. And I think really that work as a parent keeps you grounded in the importance, right, of this work of civil service and public service, and how the decisions we are making as a council really impact our future, right, and what the future of Bellingham is going to look like. I'm also an immigration attorney, so my other day job, I help the immigrant community here in Bellingham and regionally in advocacy and engagement at that local level, which is a relief because a lot of times you're banging your head against the federal policies in the immigration world. But I think as an attorney, I bring a lot of skills to the council. So some of that focuses on critical thinking, independent research, as well as just analytical approaches to problems. So needing to look at issues from all angles. Sometimes when you're an advocate in the community and focused on one particular area of focus, you can put those blinders on and push forward. But the reality is that as a city and as a council, we have to be doing so many things at once. And so really needing to look at the details matter in this work, and unintended consequences and how our work balances across the board. And so I really look forward to answering your questions and just want to thank you for this opportunity.
It has been several years since Albertsons left Birchwood. What else can be done to alleviate the food desert in this neighborhood? And that goes to you first.
Thank you. So obviously that's had a huge impact on the community there in Birchwood. And unfortunately, there was that, no compete clause that is going to be in effect for a long time. And the reality is that, so the council has taken action to prevent that from happening in the future. Obviously, that helps the future, but doesn't reconcile what's happened in that community. So right now it's looking proactively at different ways to, one, bring, food and into the community and making sure that there's access, as well as just coordinating with the local stakeholders in the community who are already doing great work and figuring out how can we leverage those, resources and that commitment. So we have the Birchwood, Food Desert Fighters who have set up stands there locally. There's, a small farmers market there on Saturdays. And so the community has really rallied, but it's going to take some additional support at the municipal level to make sure that we're prioritizing citywide that equity and access to food and food security, and recognizing how important that is. And thinking about as well how we address the workers that are impacted when there are those acquisitions that happen, right? So thinking about the workers who are working at Albertsons and then displaced, and wanting to make sure when the other corporations in our community are then benefiting from that, ensuring that the workers who have been moved are retained as well as receiving the same wage. But that's a huge problem that we're still tackling at this time.
And same question to you.
Yeah, I've met with the Birchwood Food Desert Fighters. I've had the opportunity to volunteer with them a few times in food distributions. It's amazing how that community has come together to fill a gap created by corporate greed and I think not enough pushback from local government. I know they were extremely disappointed when that building where the Albertsons was resold again, and that clause, that restrictive clause in the deed was still in place. I don't understand why our city council didn't use its bully pulpit more. In Congress, we use hearings not just as a way to study legislation and work out the details, but to apply public pressure. The CEOs of Hagen's and Albertsons should have to publicly defend why they're depriving a community of a key asset. They should be publicly embarrassed until they remove that clause. I think our city and our county too looks to its legal department often and is restrained by what they're told they can't do. And then the job of the legal department is to shield the city from liability. And I think our local governments should be the shield. That they should be out there get sued. We can handle that. Not having a grocery store is a significant security risk to the long-term health of our community. Food systems is something we should be especially worried about in the midst of all the disruption we're going to face from climate change caused weather disasters.
What should the city be doing to assist the economically disadvantaged in our community? And it's for you to start, Eamon. Yeah.
I think the lack of affordable housing in Bellingham is just fundamentally destabilizing. My family lives in a house that we own or that a bank is nice enough to let us live in. We would not own a house if my wife was a teacher too. People serving critical roles in the community cannot right now access the security of home ownership. If they rent, they're watching just this runaway train of rising rent costs. I spoke to a retired elderly woman on a fixed income on Social Security a few days ago. She said her rent went from $900 to $1,400 in the last 2 years. She started the conversation by saying that her top concern was homelessness, and then said, "And I actually, next time they raise my rent, I will be homeless." And elderly women are the fastest growing portion of our homeless population. We need to be creative within the limits of the law in how we can disincentivize landlords from raising rent. There's an obvious market pressure when you see other landlords or large management companies raising their rent to go, oh, we should do the same. It's an unfortunate that they're disincentivized from investing in their properties often and making necessary energy upgrades when they know they can charge high rent amid a rental landscape that has far too few vacancies, and they don't have to invest in a heating system that works or make sure that their windows open. We need a more robust rental inspection program, and we need to remove the regulatory barriers that make it impossible to build affordable owner-occupied homes in Bellingham too.
So in thinking about the economic crisis and struggle that our community is facing, we have to be all in on all fronts, right? There's a lot of work that has to happen simultaneously. And so thinking about affordable housing in particular and the spectrum of housing that has to be provided. And so needing additional funding for, subsidized housing for low-income community members, but as well as utilizing the new House bills passed, House Bill 1110 and 1337, to increase the number of units here in our community, as well as looking at possibly inclusionary zoning and other things that can help mandate or require beyond just incentivizing a certain percentage of housing being affordable. But affordability also has to do with wages, right? Needing good paying living wage jobs here in our community. And that requires as well bringing businesses here and ensuring that those workers have places to live. We've also touched on and heard about today, the climate impact and thinking about the need to retrofit and really weatherize and, the number of homes in our community that primarily renters are living in that aren't meeting those requirements and are costing them high costs related to utilities and other things. So all of the little pieces that we, touch on as a government have a profound impact when taken collectively. And so that commitment to that work really has to start, every day and continue when we're looking at the economic impact, as well as thinking about, how do we best support and keep people in their homes. That's something that is really critical when we're thinking about the number of people who are unsheltered at this time, but the number of people who are on that verge, right, of having just one, life incident push them into being unhoused themselves. And so wanting to make sure that we're focusing on those, eviction relief and supplemental support in order to keep people in their homes, because it's much cheaper to keep someone in their house than it is to rehouse them if they're displaced.
Okay, and do you think, and this is for you too, Do you think the city's rental inspection program is working well for tenants and landlords? Could it be improved, and if so, how would you improve it?
So that's a setup. No, I think we all know the answer to that. So, I mean, as far as the rental inspection program, yes, there's absolutely room for improvement, and we need to do better. That work is coming forward. I think that it's important that we have a balance, right, in prioritizing. When we have over 50% of our residents here in Bellingham as renters, right, that needs to be a priority for us, and to ensure that homes aren't just being treated as, commodities and investments, but that they're being treated as, the fundamental necessity that people have to be sheltered. That's really the base requirement for then, life to progress from there. And so really focusing on that importance, and also the concerns about habitability and concerns about homes in our community that have not met, the inspection requirements. And so bright lights have been shined on, on those concerns, and that work is moving forward. It's needing to have additional staffing and funding for, the enforcement side, so that we can have people on the ground doing those inspections and having that follow-up. I'm hopeful that there can be additional work to, really partner and just leverage the voices of tenants as well, and their ability to advocate for themselves through that process with landlords. And so one of the things I think about is the C-Click Fix app that we have primarily in Public Works here in the city of Bellingham, but utilizing that app as a way where in real time, right, tenants would be able to record, take pictures of, defects or concerns in their households, and that would also collect data on the location, right, and time, and it would give a way to track that data so that we can see just how broad the problem is.
Yeah, the rental inspection program is grossly insufficient right now. My understanding is that there's one inspector within the planning department, and then one code enforcement officer within the police department that handles these. There's 20-something thousand rentals throughout the city. Landlords can hire private inspectors as well, and sort of self-certify. Unsurprisingly, those inspections pass at much higher rates than when the city inspector looks at them. I think fines are very rarely, if ever, issued. And if I didn't think I was going to be fined for it, and I were a bad actor, I don't know why I would fix those programs. I think. Given that the renters are 56% of residents in Bellingham, we need to elevate that oversight. I think there should be an office of the tenant advocate to oversee the rental and inspection program, to provide education to landlords on the rights of their tenants and on their responsibilities, to crack down on junk fees. I meet and talk to a lot of good landlords too. People that could afford to buy a couple of houses when they were a little more affordable in Bellingham, who have no desire to exploit people and take advantage of the low vacancy right now. They shouldn't be lumped into the same pot as negligent, often larger management companies who again have very little incentive to actually invest in their properties. Just let them decay to the point where they can tear them down and build something new.
All right, candidates, this is your last question, and candidate Collins, you get to answer it first. Is there a topic we haven't raised that you'd like to address?
I talk about this at the door a lot. People, when I describe what I think is the alarming situation, the lack of urgency around what I think is the core issue facing our city, smart voters ask me, well, why? Why is it that you think the city leadership isn't moving quickly enough to remove these barriers on affordable housing? If you're telling me that they've been identified repeatedly in city plans, and it's a tough question to answer, because I think everybody up here, all of our elected officials today, are good people. I think they are dedicated civil servants. I think they're progressive. I think they care about affordable housing. So I'm left with, I think it's partly political will, a leadership style in our city that our council are kind of more stewards than leaders. They're there to make sure things keep moving smoothly, but not necessarily to push the ball forward. And I think it's a capacity issue too. Our council is part-time. They earn a salary that's more than my full-time salary as a teacher, and I think that shows. I love being a teacher. It's a part of my identity. I think I'm good at it, but I don't think I could be a good teacher or a good city council member if I tried to do both at the same time. If I'm privileged enough to be elected, I would reluctantly leave teaching. I'll volunteer in my friends' classrooms or something so that I can focus on this full time.
Well, first, thank you all. So I would start by saying that I think as council members, there's some debate about whether we're full-time, part-time. I know that when I go to the grocery store or when I'm on the bus or around town, right, I don't get to take that council hat off. So in that respect, I think I'm a full-time council member. But there is something about, the stewardship as well of the public funds and thinking about that this is really important work that we have as council members and as city government to think about, as was stated earlier, these are your dollars that are collected through taxes and then distributed for services and projects and programs. And so there's a certain level of due diligence that's required to make sure that we're dotting every I and crossing every T and making sure that those are sound investments. And so we think about potential lawsuits, right? I mean, that's something as well that has to be taken into consideration because you don't want to be wasting any dollar because the need is so much greater than the bucket of money that we have. And thinking also about our jobs and the balance, I'd like to say that, I wonder if we were required to quit our jobs, what does that mean? How do you identify work, right? If someone's working, has another job, is that a single mother at home with 3 kids? Is that a job? I believe it is. If you have someone who has investments in the community and they're a landlord of multiple places, is that another job? So I think it's just a slippery slope as well about how you prioritize the value of what individual council members bring to the council. So as an immigration attorney, I balance that work. I have 2 full-time jobs. I certainly turn away clients in cases because I can't do it all. But at the same time, I think that our other jobs don't detract from our work on the council, but they help define who we are and the perspectives that we bring.
All right, thank you for running for office, both of you, and for being in office. So, to Ward 3, and this is candidate Liz Darrow and candidate Dan Hamill. So, welcome. We're going to start with you, Liz, and please take 2 minutes to introduce yourself. What is your professional, political, and volunteer experience? And why are you interested in running for this office?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for hanging in on this long forum afternoon. Really appreciate you being here and for inviting all of us to participate. My name is Liz Darrow. I use she, her pronouns. I am a legislative advocate at Community to Community Development. We work on farm worker and immigrant rights. I'm also the elected precinct committee officer of Precinct 238. I serve as co-chair on the Leonard Streets Neighborhood Association, where I've served for 9 years. And I'm also a founding member of the Immigration Advisory Board with the City of Bellingham. So in all of these spaces, I meet people who have one thing in common, and that is a concern about where to bring their priorities, how to get a call back from their representatives. The basic civic engagement is, I really think, what we're missing here. And I hear that from people in every space, regardless of what their issue is. So what I bring is that I am a community organizer. I'm a people person. I really deeply care about this place where we live. And I think we have a lot going for us. I also think that coming out of a time where we have been necessarily siloed because of pandemic, people really want to engage, and I'm proud to do that work in my neighborhood. I'm proud to do that work in my precinct, and I look forward to doing that as your representative for Ward 3. And I'll say that speaking of things I'm proud of, I think one thing that represents who I am as a person is that I am I'm lucky to have received the endorsement of both the Bellingham Tenants Union and the Whatcom County Association of Realtors. And what that means about me is that I will sit down with anybody, whether we come from the same place or not, and I will hear what you have to say. That's absolutely crucial to me. And what that means about those two wonderful organizations is that everyone in this community is feeling a squeeze, feeling the need for change. And what haven't we tried yet? I have a curiosity for that. Who are we not listening to? It's absolutely important to implement those questions and move forward with progress. Thank you for having me here.
And would you like me to repeat the question? No? All right.
Dan Hamill, Bellingham City Council. I'm in my 9th year. I'm running for a 3rd term to continue the work that I did during my first 2 terms in office. I think that Bellingham is at an inflection point. I've lived here for 34 years and I've never seen our community in the state that it is now. We have a fentanyl crisis that's out of control. We have more people counted as being homeless than ever before. We have people that live here that barely can afford to live in their homes. They work here, but they want to stay in their housing. So we have unaffordable housing for workforce, and we're in a climate position right now that's untenable in my opinion. So I have an extensive track record in working in all of these issues. I co-founded several behavioral health programs, including the LEAD program, the GRACE program, the alternate response team. I co-founded the Bellingham Home Fund before I was on City Council that provides dollars for housing. And I also brought forward an affordable housing fund a couple of years ago. I championed single-use plastic ban 2 years ago. And I brought forward more legislation and programs than all of the other city council members combined. And so when it comes to experience, that's what I bring to the table. And it's a track record of doing things and getting things done. I put my nose down, try to get the work done. I've served on 30 boards, commissions, task forces, and committees since I started as a council member. And before that, I was on about a dozen boards, including being the youngest president of the York Neighborhood Association back in the day. I'm endorsed by union members, and I see some folks here today, including 106 and 1937. 1937 represents all of our non-uniformed, and 106 is our firefighter. Many more. We can go into that as we move along here. Thank you.
Right. What do you plan to achieve during your this term in office if elected? And we'll start with you.
I think one of the biggest deficiencies that we have right now is workforce housing. So folks that they play by the rules, they pay their taxes, they go to work every day, but they're having trouble staying in their housing. And so what I think the city needs to do is relook at how we do things as a city and create a public development authority, and that would create housing for workforce families in Bellingham. We do pretty well when it comes to, although we're lacking, we need to do more, but we have tried to address what's called the 50 to 80% area median income. So Eamon referenced Culshan CLT. I'm a Culshan CLT homeowner. I wouldn't be able to own a home in this community were it not for that organization. I bought it way back in the day when I worked for the Whatcom Volunteer Center making nonprofit wages. But there are folks that do really good work that work at nonprofits and work in service industries, and they just can't afford to live here. So public development authority would be one of my #1 priorities when it comes to next steps during the next term.
Same question to you.
What motivates me really is figuring out how can we open up the doors and windows at City Hall, right? So we have some folks doing really good work in that space. We have dozens of community organizations, community members who have priorities that are not being addressed. So very simply put, participatory democracy should be a revolving door. So what I want to demonstrate is how do we create relationships with each other? How do we sit down together and solve our problems together? Because I have ideas, but I don't know everything. And that's same for that's true for every person in this room, right? So what I want to do is bring local democracy back into the community. I really want to be a full-time city council council person because it's a full-time job. Many of you know that everyone in Bellingham votes in the general for all the positions. So that means I'm not just accountable to Ward 3. I have a critique of that, and we'll look at that when I'm in office, but I think being accountable to 58,000 registered voters, more than 110,000 people living in this community, who's not being represented? And I think we can look around this room and we can see that answer, right? So my priority is always being accountable, even to the people who aren't in the room, and seeking out when we come up with solutions, and even after they're implemented, how are we doing? So that process is ongoing. I'm not just sitting here telling you this because I want to get elected. I'm telling you that I think your city representative should be there for you throughout their entire term. And if you have a question and you can't get it answered, I think you should ask yourself, does that person deserve another term? It's absolutely a very important job, and you deserve someone who wants to represent you fully and completely, even beyond the election cycle.
Right, and the next question will be for you too, candidate Darrow. There is a perception that downtown Bellingham is unsafe and therefore keeping shoppers from coming to town. Do you agree with this, and what would you do about it?
So I live downtown and I work downtown, and I have for 24 years. When I came here in 1998, I was surprised by Railroad Avenue. There were people actively using drugs in the street. There were people living in the street. And I've gotten used to that over 25 years. I wouldn't say it's gotten markedly worse. I think our propensity for staying inside and arguing on the internet is something that's new since the 90s. But I think the safety factor goes both ways, right? Like someone who doesn't have shelter, someone who doesn't have resources to address their trauma is also unsafe. And so even though I have literally stepped over someone to try to get into my work, that's a safety issue for me, especially after dark, especially as a woman. The person who is living in that situation is also experiencing a safety crisis. We know that because people die in the elements every year, and our count of that is appalling. 64 people last year. We know there were people who died who weren't counted in that count. So yes, I think in some ways our entire community is unsafe because we're addressing things in an old way, and it's not working. We need to implement new solutions. We can't just keep hammering it away at every problem as if every human being is a nail. So I do think we have an arc of safety issues. They didn't start now. In fact, the crime rate has gone down. 2021 was a bonkers year for crime, and I think we all probably can figure out why that was. We're now in pre-2019 crime statistic levels and going down. So I think our perception of safety has to do with which narrative we want to buy into. Fear is a great motivator, but so is hope. And I'm really hopeful that all of our neighbors can reach a level of safety that has to do with their well-being and has to do with whether they're housed, who is their community, are they feeling supported? So no, I don't think downtown is alarmingly unsafe, but yes, I do think we have some safety measures that we should look at beyond punishment.
Same question to you.
Sure. So I do think that there's a problem in downtown when it comes to the changes that have happened, and I think fentanyl was the game changer to me. We have our fire department reports. I think it was like 2.5 overdoses per day every day, and if you include the county, it's much greater than that. And so I did a ride along with the community paramedic a couple months ago, and we went down the alley between Railroad and Cornwall. And behind every second or third dumpster or garbage can was a person smoking fentanyl, usually young men, but off the foil. And it was alarming to me. I had never seen that before. And so I do think that there are issues when 40% of downtown retailers report that they are considering leaving our downtown. That is absolutely a problem. When I moved here in '89, the mall had just opened, and it was as if Bellingham was tilted on an axis, and all of the people and the jobs and the mojo and the stores all went into 98226. And it was a game changer. There were very few stores left in downtown Bellingham, and it's taken years to recreate our downtown. We're still not there yet. So yeah, I do think that there's an issue, and that's why I voted to ban public drug use in all of our community, along with the majority of Bellingham City Council. It's why I started or co-founded the LEAD program and GRACE program, which helped keep people out of that situation. And then the alternate response team is something that I worked on for quite some time during COVID, and that sends a nurse and a designated crisis responder to behavioral health calls. And I've seen them in action, and it works. And so we have folks that need help. And locking them up is not going to be an option. They're not going to be going into Whatcom County Jail on a single drug use charge, but they can get diverted into the LEAD program. The state legislature has allocated $63 million to the navigating programs so we can actually have a place for folks to go.
Okay, and this next question will be for you to begin with. What measures would you implement in the downtown core to address climate change?
What's been brought up before about this urgency that we have when it comes to the state of folks like, Jace is a young guy here, and like what's it going to be like for students in our high schools and community colleges in the next 20 years. So I think the main things that we can do, the fastest ground that we can cover is electrifying buildings and creating incentives to do that. And then fleet. So not just city fleet, electrifying our fleet. I know our public works director likes to ride an e-bike, and we have electric police cars. I think that those things are important, but when it comes to how do we really like gain more ground more quickly, we need more charging stations. We need to make it easier for people to get into EV vehicles and encourage bike trips downtown. I don't feel comfortable leaving my bike locked up downtown for more than like 45 minutes or an hour. So you need to make like safe bike parking to encourage bike trips downtown, and also encourage more pedestrian and WTA trips downtown as well.
So we can't solve these problems in silos, right? Climate justice is an equity issue, just like every other issue that our city is facing. So putting charging stations all over town, investing in that first is disingenuous because over 80% of the people who live here cannot afford an electric vehicle. I've talked with a bus driver with the WTA who says that we could make all trips free for all people. The youth ride free, and that's great. My kids use that all the time. I'm really grateful for that. But looking at climate change, climate justice from a lens of who is going to benefit from the resources that we put into this. And so, if you don't own a home, you can't opt into solar panels, no matter how many rebates there are. So I think we really have to intersect our housing crisis with climate justice, with racial equity. That's just absolutely a necessity. If we're only doing one thing, then we're only solving one piece. And that seems really obvious, but it's how we've been doing it for a very long time. So I think we're used to that. I support the HEAL Act at the state level, which I work to help get passed. And that's the Healthy Environments for All Act. And that does look at the intersecting who is impacted first and worst. And so if we're putting low-income housing right next to the coal train that goes by more than once an hour, why are we doing that? And what can we do to make sure that people who are living in poverty and working really hard don't have to live in the places where the climate is being most devastated? And so that has to do also with bringing in the priorities of our neighbors on the South Hill, also in the lettered streets. We're impacted by ABC recycling, but that's not a closed loop system. That metal is not being recycled here and re-implemented into our economy here. So we need some honesty in the choices that we're making as a government and who actually is benefiting and who actually is impacted. And so I think the simplest way to do that is get back to community meetings, house meetings, people's movement assemblies, asking people what will work for you, and then checking back in, is this working for you? And so climate change is no different than any of the other myriad issues we have. We have to have the community with us, or it's not a just transition. It's just us telling you what you should accept, and I don't agree with that.
Is there a topic we haven't raised that you'd like to address?
Well, I went ahead and said everything's intersected already, so I'm not going to parse it out. But I mean, I think what, our problems are not simplistic here. It's not going to be an easy fix. And I think we're all feeling that in many different ways. But we cannot just keep going in the direction that we've been going, especially without implementing community solutions that are being offered. I've been a part of processes to go to town halls, to be in stakeholder committees, participating in public comment, all of these things that we put forward to say this is your opportunity to interact with your city government aren't working for the public. And so it's really, really important that we're honest about that, even though it's hard. It's not going to be easy. One person can't do it by themselves. No one person started any of the programs in our community that are working. There are really hardworking people at Grace and LEAD who want to be acknowledged for the work that they're doing, and also that they're underfunded, they're understaffed, and that we can't scale LEAD, for example, to a magnitude that would work to solve all of the problems. And so I'm really motivated to add more solutions. I support programs like Art and Grace and LEAD because I think that kind of creativity is really important. But we also, again, need to check in. What's the barometer with the community? What's the barometer with the workers? And I'm hearing from workers in those situations that they're overburdened, they're underpaid, and they don't want to be asked to expand the work to meet the needs of all of what is going on in our community. And so that piece matters. It's going to matter more and more, especially as we're impacted by climate change and the growing housing crisis. And so we can't continue this this pattern of not listening to the community. It's really, really important. Thank you for having me here. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I think one thing I want to leave you with today is the importance and value of relationships and collaborations and the ability to use those to make sure that things get done on behalf of our community. I mentioned before how many boards and commissions and task forces and such that I served on. All of those things are working with, hundreds of people over the course of the last 8.5 years to implement change and create the programs that I mentioned earlier. And I do want to leave you with one promising thing, and that is that our Representative Alicia Rule from the 42nd was able to get us, the Whatcom County community, $9 million for a behavioral health crisis center. And so and we still have a few $1 million more to raise. So that story's not done yet, but that's so promising to me that our community has shifted away from the incarceration model for people that have substance use disorder or mental health illness and are trying to do our level best to provide treatment options. And it's not easy. We have a workforce deficiency. People can't afford to work in that industry as much as possible, but the state is coming up with solutions, and I work with those folks. So I had an event that was sponsored by 3 state representatives, a fundraiser for me last week. I have those deep relationships with our state partners and our county partners. I'm endorsed by the majority of state representatives, county council, city council, Bellingham School Board, and there's a reason for that because I put in the work, I get the job done, good on my commitments, and to me that's what being a good representative is just put in the time, make sure that you listen to other people and that you work with others to get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel very fortunate that we have such good people who are running for office here. And thank you for coming, and don't forget to vote.